go live. Shit, I always mess this up these days because we make so many videos, Brian. What's up, comic book fans? Because this is the comic book channel that I have, not the horror one. This is Comic Books Transformed. I am Pete, and I'm here with my good friend Brian, Coors Hair. Brian, we're on Comic Books Transformed, aren't we?
We are.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, good. And we didn't cover Andor last week because we went really in depth talking about Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Yes.
Tonight, go ahead.
We rushed through an Andor episode once, and it never sat well with me. So yeah, that's an episode that you don't rush through.
Yes. The episode 10, that was like one of the best Star Wars things I ever saw. We're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to talk about episode 11 as well. So before that, though, as I get my bearings over here, I scrolling through Twitter as Twitter kind of collapses like the Republic in Andor. And I saw a tweet where someone asked this kind of silly question of, where would you rather live, Gotham or Metropolis? And I feel like that's such an obvious answered question, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so which one would you pick?
I mean, obviously it'd be Metropolis because, I don't know, it seems like way more horrible stuff happens in Gotham on a regular basis, and it's always dark, and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just any place where the Joker frequents or lives, I think you don't want to be there, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, Twitter's kind of a gold mine right now. I mean, I don't even know why. I just brought up that question just because I wanted to see what you said. But yeah, like, just to kind of put a timestamp on when we're recording this, it's Friday, November 18th. It's very possible that Twitter is going to be done by like this weekend. Who knows, though? We might be talking about this, years from now on Twitter.
Yeah, my gut feeling about Twitter, I mean, I still have @Corsair in my little name here. I think I don't think it's going to crash and burn this weekend for any particular reason. I think people want it to. People both want it and don't want it to at the same time. I am increasingly like Elon Musk has jumped up to one of my most hated people because I just hate the general attitude he has when people are complaining about things we're saying hey, we don't like this or whatever, and it's just he just laughs and puts up a meme, and I don't know, it's really grinding my gears.
Yes. Well, we should definitely, rebel against this guy, like one of the most powerful people on Earth, right?
Yeah.
And we'll probably get crushed just like the rebels in this show. So, but anyway. Yes. There's only one way out, and that's for us to get canceled. But anyway, one debate question, because I figure we get a little saucy tonight. We'll kind of bring up things that are beyond these episodes too. Brian and I had this little thread going on with Danny from the Lastercast where
Danny called us nerds. How dare
Yes, Danny called us nerds, and it's because we started talking about our Transformers fandom, which, we love Transformers so much.
Mister, I can recite every line of dialogue from every horror movie and name every director since 1920.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
Nerds.
Yes. There's all different types of nerds. Maybe there's not as many Transformers nerds as there are Star Wars nerds. But that kind of ties in with this question I was going to pose to you. We sort of talked about this a little bit. But Star Wars has its own fandom. Transformers has its own fandom. We talk about Transformers all the time because our show's called Comic Books Transformed. We're huge Transformers fans. Do you think that there is a main group of fans that make up the majority of the fandom for both of these fandoms?
Do you talk about fandom crossover, or are you talking about a larger portion of a group that has one view in each of these fandoms?
That's the second one.
Oh man, it's hard to say as things go on because I mean both of these properties have been going on for more than 30 years. Star Wars even more. Yeah. I think that with each generation, someone has latched onto something else. Obviously, for us, we were there for the earliest iteration of Star Wars and Transformers, so that's kind of where it probably resonates most for us.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much.
Yeah.
But especially with Transformers, I see all the time. People that grew up with Beast Wars, people that grew up with the Unicron trilogy, people that grew up with Prime, because Prime is now 10 years old.
Oh man,
it's nuts.
And we are old, yeah.
So I think that a lot of the younger generations of fans are very, and I mean, and if there is a larger group for Transformers, it's probably that G1 fan. But a lot of those younger fans hate the G1 fans because they're very particular. And maybe we can associate that sort of with the older Star Wars fans who just think that the original movies are the bee's knees, and kind of everything else, or most everything else, is kind of trash. I don't consider myself to be in any camp where I don't greatly dislike any aspect. I mean, of course, there are aspects I think are much worse than others, and quality-wise, but I don't hate, overall on any particular era or iteration of either Star Wars or Transformers.
Yeah. That was really well put, man. That was actually kind of a better answer than even what I was expecting, and you give awesome answers. I was going to say that the whole reason why we even had this conversation in the first place is because there is this one guy who could be a pretty toxic Star Wars YouTuber, where he just shits on a lot of the Star Wars fandom, and he seems to really love the prequel stuff. In the Clone Wars show, he loves the prequel trilogy. And this guy, they were talking about how bad Andor is, and then they were saying how
okay, this is that 2-minute clip you sent, right?
Right. And it's so ironic, because we're on our show where we don't get a ton of views, right? And then this guy's got millions of views, and I think that a lot of times the negative kind of take on fandoms gets the most traction, and we sort of say, oh, it was okay, or we give a lot of praise to things. We don't usually get very negative with these reviews, except for Book of Boba Fett. But anyway, I was going to say, though, was that he wanted a gritty General Grievous show, to kind of compensate for Andor. And it was interesting to see that, that was what he wanted. And then he was talking about how the guy that was on the show with him basically said all these great things about Andor, but yet they were like, I'm so bored by it. They're like, the acting is great and the production value is great and all this kind of stuff, but I'm bored, right? And it just made me think of well, what are Star Wars fans looking for? And then you made the comparison where you said that Transformers fans kind of want Generation 1 style stuff, and they're not into the more than meets the eyes IDW comic stuff that we like. That's sort of what we want, but it's we're only a small sliver of the mass, right?
Yeah, I think what it boils down to is the harder core fan you are of something, the more you've consumed it, the more you've poured over it, the more details you've ingrained in your brain, and you want more of that deep cut stuff. And I think the deep cut stuff generally doesn't agree with the casual fan or the masses that are making a large chunk of the money for these properties. You mentioned More Than Meets the Eye, the IDW series by James Roberts and a host of amazing artists. To me, that's peak stuff there. It's deep cut characters. It takes them seriously. There's real issues, and they give unique voices to previously one-dimensional characters, not even two-dimensional characters, one-dimensional characters, with a kind of grace to it. And it's really fantastic. And there's only so many times I can rewatch the Transformers coming to Earth and interacting with humans, with the human side characters and all that. Although I have to say, I kind of love Earth Park at the same time.
Yeah.
It's another story of the humans coming to Earth, but I mean, it's different, and I actually feel they're drawing a lot of plot points from the IDW comics, and that's kind of what's intrigued me here. I think it's a really well-made show. I think the War for Cybertron trilogy had the setting I want, but this has the quality and of storytelling and production value that I want. Earthspark. I mean, so yeah.
So then, how do you compare? What is an analog for Andor to Transformers then?
Sure. So this is it's a little hard to explain this. Maybe it's a little far fetched. I think again, a Star Wars fan wants a deep cut kind of thing, but at the same time, what's popular about Star Wars are these kind of like flashy, larger than life characters. They're not larger than life, but they're flashy. They're cool. They're badasses. They're really powerful, and I think there's a fandom a section of the fandom that wants things like that. And this show has a very prestige television human element to it. This is kind of what I messed up my entire delivery from my argument on Twitter. But I think what generally appeals to people are relatable human things. The people that aren't the hardcore fans. I think Andor is doing that, but maybe the hardcore fan here wants the flashiness. They want, and I think the example I used was that a person like that YouTuber probably wants a show like The Mandalorian, but without Grogu in it, And then, I feel like that would perfectly define their General Grievous show that they've talked about.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, it's very interesting too because I think that the Star Wars fandom dwarfs the Transformers fandom, right?
Oh, so Star Wars is much more of a cultural icon and touchstone that will be discussed, for decades and centuries to come.
Right, and but yet I think that Transformers are so popular, and the live action movies were so big that I think that most people know the general lore of Transformers, like very basic general lore. They could probably name like at least 3 Decepticons. They could probably name like 3 Autobots.
I wouldn't go so far with 3 Decepticons, but I would say that you could probably know that about Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, and they're from a robot planet and things like that.
I think they know like Megatron, probably Starscream, maybe Soundwave.
I recognize Starscream over Megatron, but
wow, okay,
as well.
Yeah. I wish that actually I'd looked up like the ratings for the Star Wars Disney Plus shows, like which ones were the most successful. I know that Andor is like the least watched, right? So,
yes.
Do you know if Obi-Wan did better than like Book of Boba Fett or Mandalorian?
Let's find out.
Okay.
Live recordings.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can kind of make a point while you're looking it up too. Like, I think that the general overall discussion I see that people that really love Andor. I don't see a lot of negative things about it. However, I also see that they're saying that people don't watch it, right? And one guy had this tweet today too, which was so great. He's like, Andor did this great job of exposing the attention span of Star Wars fans. And I know that's kind of pretentious and judgmental, but it really is the kind of show where, you're not eating popcorn. It's not spectacle. You're sitting there. It's very cerebral. But I think it's fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
Like you and I, when we review these shows, I think that we get kind of swept up in just kind of the fun of talking about them, and we give them a lot of praise. But when I look back on like Book of Boba Fett, or if I look back on Obi-Wan, and maybe even a little bit of The Mandalorian, I start to see the cracks a lot more, and I start to see like a lot of flaws. I think that The Mandalorian is like, whoa, look at this. This has almost, I actually can't really point out flaws for this show because it's so well made. I think that literally the only flaw that you can make for this show is to just say, I just don't like them making this type of Star Wars story. Like, I don't like that it has this pacing and it has this serious aspect to it. That I feel like that's the only flaw. I mean, maybe one flaw I could point out. I got one fucking flaw for you. Is that the aliens that were in this episode 11, I thought that one of them, their arms looked too fake. Like, it was just too clear to me that it was like a puppet,
Oh, you're talking about flaws in Andor, not flaws in The Mandalorian. Okay, sorry.
Mandalorian, all the other shows, I could point out flaws easily. But Andor, the only flaw I could see people saying is it's like, this is not what I want. This is not for me. That's the only fucking flaw I can see.
Okay.
You know? Oh, so you looked up the info?
I can't find a clear enough thing that I can digest quickly. So we'll have to talk about that with the finale next week.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of funny, right? I guess I'm getting real fucking metaphysical. Or not metaphysical, like philosophical. Maybe it's because Thanksgiving break is coming up or whatever. But it's like, obviously fandoms get people super passionate about shit to where they're like yelling at strangers and they're so upset or they're so excited. And it's like, what do people want from these franchises? And it's clear that they don't want Andor because people aren't showing up for it. Yet it's also like this thing that seems like it's made from a better quality than a lot of the other stuff they've put out.
Yeah, this is a better quality show, and I think one of the main flaws I feel with the other Disney Plus Star Wars shows have been the kind of parade of very, very minor celebrity cameos. I'm not sorry, I mean major celebrities and very minor cameos throughout. Really takes me out of most of the episodes when I see them. This show has not done that.
Right.
I mean, you could argue that Forrest Whitaker is, a mainstream star, but he actually has a role in the franchise, and he's not just dropping in here because he's a big Star Wars.
Really great point.
I would argue that doesn't count. So that to me is like the number one plus of this show is that they're taking it seriously and not just casting people in Star Wars so they can say they were in Star Wars.
Yeah. And I think one of the main reasons why I'm talking about this so much is because I personally want more of this. Like, I want more of a show where I come away from it and I'm like, damn, that was really good. That was well made. It was smart. They did not dumb things down for us. They're not doing stupid cameos like you just said. And they're especially not fucking like, oh, here's nostalgia. Here's nostalgia. Yeah, like, enough of that shit. This show does not do that. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, as far as like, just keeping that Transformers comparison going, there's so many different versions of Transformers at this point, like because they kind of just keep rebooting it. And it's like, well, there's the comic version, there's this cartoon version, whereas Star Wars, except for when they said that the old canon isn't new or considered the real canon anymore, that's the only change. Otherwise, Star Wars has just been one thing.
Yeah.
So like literally the Luke Skywalker of the original trilogy is the Luke Skywalker of the sequel trilogy, and he's the Luke Skywalker of all these shows,
Yeah, and where we have 8 gazillion Optimuses and Bumblebees and Megatrons and
Yeah. I mean, there's at least like 30, right? Like 30 versions of Optimus, probably.
That's probably low.
Yeah. So anyway,
actually, one quick tidbit. Somehow the Japanese continuity connects everything together. I have no idea how. They literally connected just about every iteration together as a single unified universe. Unified universe. Jesus Christ, what's wrong with me today?
It's all good.
And it's like when you try to make the mental gymnastics required to, I don't even think it's possible.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I love that kind of shit, though. I love when they try to like explain things like that. Sometimes I try to do that with the live action Transformers movies because they fucked up their own continuity. Like, they contradict themselves.
Yeah, I still think back to like a long time ago. You asked me is who fucked up their continuity worse, Transformers or X-Men?
Right. As the X-Men movies.
X-Men movies. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the comics kind of fuck up their continuity too. But anyway. I think it's time that we should actually talk about Andor, but I appreciate you having that discussion with me. So for Andor, episode 10, One Way Out, that was like the big episode that everyone was really talking about. Everyone kept raving about Andy Serkis. Like, what was your main thing? Because it's like 2 weeks ago at this point. Like, what are you still thinking about for that episode?
The speech. Which speech? Kino's speech, Luthen's speech, One Way Out, I Can't Swim, just everything is. There's so many memorable things in this episode, and this really was like the best one yet. I'm curious to see if they'll be able to top it, even with the finale coming next week. I mean, really, what bad thing could you say about this episode?
Yeah, so good, so good. It really gets you kind of swept up in a whirlwind. It makes you think that like the whole episode is just the prison break, and it kind of is that. But there is some stuff with Mon Mothma. There's
Yeah,
stuff
actually,
with
you know what? And the stuff with Mon Mothma, I would say that maybe some of the slowest stuff in the show has been with Mon Mothma.
Yeah.
But this episode, the scene that happens here, absolutely just justifies everything to me. They took the stakes and they raised them to a level where I'm like, oh shit, now I actually care. Like I actually really am invested here because the choice that she has to make going forward for the rebellion is like insane and very relatable to a parent like me or like you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive into that part before we get into the prison break stuff. So essentially Mon Mothma, she is missing a ton of money. And on Star Wars Explained, I got to give him some credit too. He's talking about like loose plot threads, and he's asking when is Andor going to meet Mon Mothma, and he's also wondering if the money that they've stolen from the heist in the beginning of the show will that be used to kind of fill in that gap of money that she has. I never even thought of that.
Potentially, but I don't think it's the fact that money is missing. I think it's just the fact that there's money on a ledger somewhere that leaves a trail.
Okay.
I think they found disposable ways to move money around and make it's money laundering, really. And I think that with the Empire's crackdowns, they couldn't explain away the last transaction of 400,000 credits. So I don't necessarily think that she doesn't have the money. It's just that she won't be able to hide that money, where that money went.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Well, so basically the only solution is that her friend, who's a banker, can give her is that she has to work with this guy, Davos Sculdun, which we said is like a true Star Wars name. And Davos Sculdun seems to be amiable and willing to work with her, but then we find out that his condition to work with her is that her daughter needs to meet with his son, and there's a potential arranged marriage there.
Yes, so this is why there were all these little random like name drops and references to gender and culture. It was leading to this, and I honestly never expected it. I love the setup that they have here. They've greatly defined the relationship Mon Mothma has with her husband and daughter. That she's kind of doing this rebel thing on her own, without their knowledge. There's definitely a little bit of a rift in her family there. Her daughter seems to favor the father, and she seems to rebel against her a bit. And now the only way that she loves her daughter, she loves her family, of course, but she realizes how important this rebellion is. But her only payment option here is basically to sell her daughter in an arranged marriage to this the son of this kind of criminal.
Yeah.
And like, to me, the way they set it up is just like perfect. Like I want to go rewatch every Mon Mothma scene just to take it all in again, because like I never expected something like that to happen. I didn't know where exactly that storyline was going, but I really like the tension involved in her making that choice.
Yeah, and do you know the name of the actress that plays Mon Mothma? I never write it down.
It's Genevieve something.
I feel like I've never seen her in anything besides the fact that she was in the prequels as Mon Mothma. Then she was in Rogue One, and
Genevieve
then she was in
O'Reilly.
Genevieve O'Reilly. Okay, and I just think
she's an Irish actress. I think she's just not been in very many American things.
Yeah, she is very similar to Ewan McGregor and to Ian McDiarmid in the sense that, you know, their aging has kind of synced up perfectly for the projects that they've been on, the Star Wars projects, right? Like Ian McDiarmid was pretty young when he was the Emperor for the first time, but he had all this makeup on making him look super old, right? Then when it comes time for the prequels, he's an older man. And just like with Ewan McGregor playing Obi-Wan, he's at this great age where he is kind of that middle ground between Alec Guinness and his prequel Obi-Wan. And then she's just great in this because she just was like this actress kind of in a very small cameo role in the prequels, and now she's grown into this woman. And I just think it's this great detail. Mon Mothma, is such a like kind of throwaway character in the original trilogy. She just comes in and makes a very quick announcement, and then she's done. But it's like, oh, that's the head of the rebellion right there. And so this truly shows the sacrifice and how tough her life is to become the head of the rebellion. It adds weight to this character who was like barely in the original trilogy at all.
Yeah, and that's what I like about this. They're fleshing out these kind of cameo characters and giving them worthy plot lines.
Yeah, and it's so funny too because like when you watch Rogue One, there's not much to most of the characters besides like Jyn Erso, right? Like there's Jyn and her father, they have that relationship, but you don't really get to know that much about even Cassian, and then this whole show is just about building up these characters, and that movie isn't even that old. I think it's like 6 years old or 7 years old at this point.
Yeah, it was like 2016, 2017, something like that.
Yeah. So 5 years old, right? So,
yeah,
but anyway, going back to that episode, if we don't talk about the prison break itself, let's just talk about what else is great. So we find out about this guy, Lonnie, who is a double agent working for the Empire, for the ISB, and then he also happens to be working for Luthen. And did you have any idea that this guy was working for Luthen by that point?
Not at all.
Yeah. Perfect. And so, like, we have this sequence where he goes to meet with Luthen after they have decided to go on this plan that's going to expose these rebel operatives. And so he's on this elevator in Coruscant in this kind of like dingy looking building. And Luthen's talking in an earpiece to him. And then when he finally gets to the floor that Luthen's on in the building, it's like this epic, awesome shot,
Yeah.
You were talking. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, before you were talking about sort of like people want these epic, badass characters and stuff like that. And Luthen is not a Sith Lord or a Jedi or anything like that. But that shot of him on that floor with his coat billowing in the wind, that was just so fucking epic looking.
Yeah, that was a very Star Wars shot. And I just wanted to comment generally about these weird kind of backgrounds where, there's these like under walkways. Like I think there was one in the Mandalorian somewhere in the last season. No, I'm sorry, we took Boba Fett in the Mandalorian episode. Where there's like these elevators, they go to these walkways like underneath cities. It's such a weird thing, but it looks really cool.
Yeah. Aesthetically, it's awesome. Practically, it doesn't make much sense, right?
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah. So anyway, Stellan Skarsgård just gives this speech to this guy, this Lonnie guy, this Imperial, about like essentially what he's given up, right, for the rebellion, and it's just this fantastic fucking speech. I said this in the notes that like Stellan Skarsgård doesn't allow this show to become mediocre. Like he keeps this show as a prestige show. It's like on another level because of his acting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, did you have anything to say about his speech or?
Yeah, I mean, it's just more about the ugliness of this rebellion. We like to look at Star Wars in black and white. Empire bad, rebels good, but everybody's got to play dirty, essentially.
Yeah.
The general conflict here is that Lonnie wants out. He doesn't want to be an informant anymore. He's been in there 6 years, implanted in the Empire. He's got a family now. Again, very relatable. And he wants out. He wants to give this one last piece of information as kind of like a send off. But Luthen's like, no, you in this place is more valuable than the rebellion losing 30 Anto Krieger and 30 men.
Yeah.
And that's like insane. It's like, you don't have a choice. Like you're trapped here. Like, you have to keep doing this and either I turn you in or you get punished either way, or that's it. Like you don't get out of this. I'm not letting you go. And that's kind of like the ugly side of the rebellion. And, it was a great speech, and that was what ended the episode on a very powerful note, I might add.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's the thing too with this show is that a lot of these characters are not gonna see a happy ending. You know, they're not gonna make it to A New Hope. A lot of these characters, and a lot of these characters won't even make it to Return of the Jedi. You know, so and we start to see the body count kind of start to pile up in the next episode. But one thing that you've mentioned multiple times is like it's good to see how tough it is to live under the Empire, you know, and this episode, you know, once again with the prison, we see how bleak it really is, and it's like Kino, Danny, what's his not his Andy Serkis's character, he has finally seen too much by the beginning of this episode, and it's like we're having our revolt, and we are breaking out today. There's no turning back, and the way that they rebel is impressive. Like it's absolutely thought out. Um, and it's pretty scary too, like what actually happens, right? Because they essentially flood the floor that they're on, so that way once they shock the floor, the Imperials shock the floor, then it's going to short out the system, and then they just kind of climb their way up, and then eventually start taking out the Imperials.
Yeah, and like you said, we do see a lot of bodies start to pile up here. We see a few people get shot by the floor. You see a lot of people get shot by the few guards that are there. And, you know, I don't think, you know, we really don't get much of a confirmation on how many of the people from Andor's table actually make it out.
Yeah.
We know that Melshi makes it out. We know that Kino gets at the top, but you don't really see much of the other, I guess, unnamed characters. I'm not sure if they have names or not.
Yeah. And, like, so people are just getting taken out. There's this real tension because you keep thinking, oh, man, is Andy Serkis going to get killed? And then they make their way all the way to the top of this tower, and then the guys start jumping out. And then, you know, at first they go to this edge, and there's just water out there, and one guy falls over, and I'm like, oh, shit, that guy probably died, and, like, something has to happen, like a ship has to come down to rescue them or something. And then it just turns out, no, they're going to jump into the ocean. But then you get this gut punch of a reveal, which that Andy Serkis, his character Kino, can't swim. And I kind of wanted to hear what you thought about that line because I have a lot to say about that line.
It gives so much depth to this 3-episode character that, like you said in your notes here, that we probably won't see again. The fact that he was so, you know, with the system and believed in and trusted in the system, and then a whirlwind of a day completely turns him around. He's all gung ho, and then he gives this rousing speech to the rest of the prison, and even his hesitancy there to give the speech too was spoke volumes to me of how great and deep this well thought out this character was. And just after you see that I can't swim line, just going back and thinking that, like, he did all this knowing that he can't swim. Like he knew exactly where this base was. He knew what the outside looked like. He got delivered there at some point, you know, dropped off. So he knew he did all of that, knowing that he couldn't get out. Like how do you get more ironic and tragic there than that, you know? And the fact that they just say that they just leave it off as I can't swim, and he's just standing there, and that's it.
Yeah,
That's the last you see. I hope that's the last we see. That's a great ending there, for the character. And I mean, I don't want to say I don't want to see more of him, but I think it's better if we don't, because he was fantastic. That's a great way to end it off there.
Yeah. As like a guy that talks about movies and comics and books and stuff so much on these channels, it's the best thing in the world is when you get surprised, right? When you're like, oh, I haven't seen this coming. And a lot of the times surprises are these sort of twist reveals where it's like, oh, you didn't think about this detail, or this person's actually this person. But in this case, the surprise is a very subtle one where it's like, you know, he just says this one line, and the wind has gone out of his sails, but it's not like a shock would have been like if he had gotten shot and died kind of brutally, right? It would have been like, oh, I can't believe he got taken out that quickly or in that gruesome way. But it's just this sort of like he admits to himself and he smiles. Like he says, I can't swim. And it's just kind of like, that's it for me. And it's like, when I say it's shocking in the sense that it's not what you expect. You don't expect that the last shot of this character is going to be him saying, I can't swim. And then that's it. You expect it to be that you see his dead body, and so, or you see the Imperials getting him. So the fact that he says, I can't swim, and then that's the last we see of him, it's like you're not really used to it because you've seen so much stuff like this. You think it's going to go a certain way, and it's like, oh no, it's different. And I have to say too that the music kind of hits a crescendo right before we get to that part. Like it really hits a crescendo when he's doing his speech and he's at the highest moment of his speech, and it got me so much that I was crying during his speech, and so like it's like you hit this high where you're emotional and you're crying, and then it's like this bittersweet thing where he's like, I can't swim, and it just so fucking good.
Yeah, it was shocking in a good way, and if they killed him off in any other way, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as good as that.
Right.
Perfect ending, like perfect.
right. What I mean by shocking is just like, it's not like I wasn't anticipating it, I wasn't picturing it like that, and they just pulled it out somehow. Perfect, yeah. So that episode is great, and everyone was talking about how great it was. Andy Serkis was phenomenal. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, but just like his face, just his facial acting alone is enough to convey so much, and that's why he's so great for all of his motion I think I've already said it though. So let's move on to episode 11, which was called A Daughter of Ferrix, or Daughter of Ferrix.
Daughter of Ferrix, yes.
And that is the reason why it's called that is because Marva has died by this episode. And how'd you feel about Marva being dead by this episode?
I mean, they've been leading up to it. It wasn't surprising to me. Clearly, it's just kind of a way to bring everything to a close. Not to a close, to bring everything together for the finale. That everyone's been watching her, waiting for Andor to come back, and now everyone's kind of heightened because now that she's died, he may not come back or anything like that. But this is kind of like their last ditch effort. So we have Vel and Cinta there. We have already there. We're gonna have Cyril Karn coming up there. We have the Imperials there already. Obviously, Bix is there. What's the droid's name?
It has a B in it.
I don't know. That droid's there, and Cassian coming back, finding out towards the end, and knowing that he's going to go back there, and that's where the finale is going to take place here.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up this great point that there's so many plot points contingent upon Cassian going to see her, and then it's like, oh well, she's dead now, and so that changes kind of everything. There's so many plot threads, and so I thought personally that we would see her one more time, at least, like interacting with him. But I think it's much more effective for her to just be dead, because it's like he made this choice. He pulls off that heist. He could have joined her in some form of rebellion on Ferrix, or he could have he could have done something and just been in her life. But instead, he went to this like Florida planet, and then ended up getting arrested, and so he's not there to be with her. So it really
fair, he couldn't have stayed there. He had to leave. Like he knew he was getting chased down. He knows that he needed to change his name and escape somewhere else. So yeah.
Does it ever make you wonder? Like he must be one of the most wanted men in the galaxy by the time that Rogue One comes around.
Yeah, it's like a wonder he can still get around. Especially with his original name.
Right. So you mentioned the droid. They show the droid's perspective at one point while people are talking about Marva and kind of wrapping up her affairs and kind of cleaning up her house. And the droid, from its perspective, you can kind of see that it's shaking with anxiety, and it's like showing emotion. Now, droids can show emotion in Star Wars, but usually it's like this over the top theatrics. This was a little bit over the top as well, but you don't really see kind of quiet anxiety from a droid, you know?
Yeah, you also don't really see people kind of respecting the droid having a reaction like that too. Like I can't remember the Andor's friend,
The big guy, yeah.
Yeah, the big guy there who's the minor.
Yeah.
Just that, like, considering their feelings and their grief, is not something you see in Star Wars, really. Droids are essentially slaves in Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
Plain and simple. So it's an interesting way to see this go down, is that they're like worried about the droid and him being okay.
Yeah. Yeah. People in Star Wars treat droids the way that we treat, like our cell phones or something. If they start acting up, our computers, our cars, we get annoyed. We might kick them or we might throw them or something. That's the way people treat droids, which is weird because they're like sentient creatures with emotions and stuff, And in that sequence, I didn't realize it. I mean, I talk about Twitter so much, but this one guy pointed out how there's an Imperial that's essentially a spy there waiting for Cassian to show up. And I didn't know that guy was there until someone pointed out on Twitter. And then they show him a lot in this episode, and he makes contact with Dedra. When he does, Dedra is sort of like on the monitor. She's almost like looking down, even though she's on a monitor. It's like you can kind of tell she almost seems like she's high up, and she has such an evil look to her. And it's kind of amazing the transformation this character has gone from the very first time we see her to now, where she's like true, like snarling Star Wars villain, like Imperial villain,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very, very smart choice. And we've said this before, that to make her seem sort of sympathetic and an underdog in her first appearance, first one or two appearances. And then to get this, like, nope, they're bad. They're real bad.
Yeah.
Don't trust them at all.
Yeah, right. And so she has this conversation with the spy, and she's talking about like what are the procedures for a funeral on Ferrix, and then he explains that they cremate the person's body, and then they take their ashes and put them into bricks. Like essentially, when you make a brick, you incorporate the person's ashes, and then those bricks are then used to fill up a hole somewhere on Ferrix. And I just thought that was kind of brilliant. Really interesting custom,
Yeah, it's a very poetic detail to add to this culture that kind of gives it a lot of depth that you don't normally see about a lot of these space planets.
Yeah. So Andor at this point, he has escaped the prison. He has swam to shore, unlike poor Kino. And the very first shot we see of him is that he's climbing on the side of a mountain, and we actually see his feet, and his feet look really damaged, and it just looks absolutely miserable. He's on the side of a mountain with Melshi, and they are hiding from Imperials. They come across these two aliens, and here comes my one criticism is that the fucking aliens' arms, man, it just does not look practical.
Yes, I'll agree there. Although it didn't bother me at all. It is as much as I say that this feels like a non-Star Wars show. I don't mind these little reminders here again. And this is Star Wars, and they have lots of weird looking aliens around. And I kind of loved that they, although they did detectively trap them for a few minutes, then they toyed with them a little bit. They're like, yeah, screw the Empire, man. Like, they're screwing everything up here. We don't want to help them.
Yeah. They end up being cool dudes, these weird kind of troll-looking monster men. But they also have this fucking awesome net that, like, it's like a mine net that just grabs them like Spider-Man, kind of.
Yeah, I was thinking it looks very much like a Spider-Man web.
Yeah. So they get Andor off the planet, and he goes back to planet Florida, where he's able to steal like his belongings from his apartment, and then we,
invasion.
yes, and then we get yet another fantastic fucking scene with Luthen, and this time he's meeting with Saw, and it's just like, honestly, man, out of all the shit that we cover, I can't think of another thing I'd rather watch more than Luthen and Saw Gerrera talking together in a cave. Like, out of all the shit we cover.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic, and they're just kind of again showing the ugliness of the rebellion here. when Luthen walks in, Saw's all gung ho, like, Sepp, tell me, get me in touch with Krieger. You just tell me when and where, and I'll be there, and we'll take them down, whatever. And he's like, no, we can't do that because all this is going to happen here. We have to sacrifice these people, and there's an honest discussion about it, about what Luthen values and why he's able to let go of Krieger, because there's no ties back to him, but he couldn't allow Saw to, because I think there's a trail there that can be followed, and it's just like, he's a great character, but he's kind of a bastard too,
Absolutely.
Like, any means necessary kind of character, and it's very compelling to watch the scene play out.
Yeah. I mean, you have these two powerhouse actors, and there's that real tension when Saw kind of makes the connection. He's like, "Oh, you're willing to let these 30 men get sacrificed, And he's like, "Well, you must have people among my group too." And he starts to get paranoid about his people, and he's very dangerous to begin with. So there's so much tension there. I was thinking about things that we do actually review, like Obi-Wan and that scene in particular in Obi-Wan where Vader's mask is cracked at the end, and he says that Anakin is gone. Like, I will probably rewatch that scene because it's so great and so well done. I would rewatch this cave scene again just by itself because I think it's just so well done. Yeah. There's not much like it, but it's just a testament to the show, because it's like we've never met Luthen until we started watching Andor, and then Saw Gerrera we've seen a little bit in Rogue One, and it's just like, this is one of the best Star Wars things I've seen in like years,
Yeah.
So then, can you please explain to me the Mon Mothma scene? I think I must have just like tuned out or something, but I didn't really see the relevance for that scene with Vel and Mon Mothma. Like, what was going on there?
She's basically just conveying to Vel what we found out the last episode about what's the name of God damn it, Davos Golden's offer. She's basically just saying, like, they're fleshing out her dilemma and the money laundering. Really, they're saying that because the Empire has cracked down so much, these are the lengths I have to go to, and I have to essentially give up my daughter to save the rebellion.
Yeah.
And just to kind of shock her. We know that Vel is off to Ferrix to hopefully track down Cassian.
Yeah.
So that's really what it was. It's fleshing out why this money laundering thing is so important, because it could literally just lead back to leave a trail towards the rebellion and just destroy everything they work for. So that's why how important it is to weigh an entire rebellion against this horrible fascist empire versus your own flesh and blood.
Yeah. Wow.
And again, I can't speak to how compelling this decision is to me. It's the lead up and everything like that. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah, man. We got to see how this goes next.
I mean, we kind of know where it's going to go.
What's that?
I mean, we kind of know where it's going to go. Obviously, she doesn't give up the rebellion, because we see her with the rebellion later on.
So you're saying that she's going to essentially sacrifice her daughter for the rebellion?
Maybe not. Maybe she could find some other way or something like that. But I mean, we know that she's not going to. Maybe she does. Maybe she just goes into hiding. Maybe she doesn't accept the offer, and she just goes into hiding with the rebellion. I mean, maybe that's where it was out there. But still, that's a real heavy choice to make either way, and it's very compelling.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, story wise, which option would make the most sense, and I think that letting her daughter go with the criminal's son probably is this thing that makes the most sense story wise, because it's just showing like she'll do anything for the rebellion. It's above family for her. I think that might be it, but I don't know. We'll see. Luthen at this point, we actually think that he might get captured, because he meets with Saw and he's going to come back to Coruscant, but then this really awesome looking Imperial ship shows up too. Did you like that ship or no?
Yeah, it was cool looking. very much reminded me of Spaceball 1 with their giant radar.
Oh yeah, and that radar gets fucked up. It doesn't get jammed, but it gets fucked up. Yeah.
There's only one man who would dare give me the raspberry. No,
Luthen. Luthen. Right. So like, I think the reason why that ship looks so awesome too is just because of the lighting and stuff, and like the clouds and the planet below lighting it up like that. It looks great. And then Luthen does all these kind of tricks to get away from the Imperial ship. He shoots projectiles at that satellite dish and fucks it up. And then it turns out his ship is like a Darth Maul lightsaber. Like, what is up with that?
I don't know. It's a pretty cool ship. It's got some hidden tricks there, and it was a cool scene. It was a very tense scene with because you've never seen someone escape a tractor beam before, in Star Wars. So you're like, oh shit, they're gonna get him, and every time they're always getting boarded and all this, and he gets away and in a pretty cool fashion, I think.
Do you think that he can't go back to his shop on Coruscant now, or what?
I think he can. I don't think they identified who he was.
Okay.
I think that ship is probably like unmarked or unregistered or something like that, and they didn't get any identifying features of who is on board.
Okay.
Maybe they have a recording of his voice. That's probably the only thing they got out of
it. Yeah. And his voice.
Probably panic though, and he's probably gonna, retreat from that area. I mean, maybe that gives more credence to the fact that Mon Mothma was gonna walk away from her senator position and just go full-time rebellion and leave her family behind. And maybe that's what Luthen's going to do too here. He's just going to go pull up on Yavin somewhere and wait for this all to blow
over. Right, that's just what I was about to say, is that we know that they're going to Yavin for season 2, so maybe just everything's kind of pointing there. I mean, maybe we're talking about like what happens with Mon Mothma and her daughter. Maybe she actually doesn't sacrifice her daughter and she takes her daughter to Yavin 4,
Maybe.
So we'll see. So anyway, that's it for these 2 episodes. I appreciate you talking to me about this. About Andor and just about the fandoms in general. As you guys can tell, like, me and Brian are really big Transformers fans, besides being Star Wars fans, comic book fans. We probably will eventually cover Earthspark on this channel. We'd love to hear from more Transformers fans because we just love it so much. But of course, we're here from Star Wars fans too. If you guys have not subscribed to the channel, please do. And let us know what you thought about the 2 most recent episodes of Andor. So until then, though, Brian and I will see you guys next week.